Hey, Mom, how's it going?
I'm having a good day, Lindsay. How's your day going?
It's going good. I'm super pumped for this podcast. We've got a return guest, which does not normally happen in our world.
We do. We absolutely do. I'm super excited to have Thomas Mann join us, not only on the podcast, but also on the agency focus team. Thomas, welcome to the podcast and the team, my friend.
Well, thank you, Carrie. It's a little surreal to be in the very small list of repeat guests on Insurance Refocused.
Lindsay, actually, have we had anybody repeat?
Yes. We've had Rob Bowen repeat because we did an update on his purchase that he did. And then we did a series with, who did we do a series with? It was about financial planning. Eric Garcia?
Yeah, that is, you're right. We've had 2 repeat guests. You're now number 3, my friend. That's crazy. Yeah.
That's good company. Yeah.
That is very, very good company and a very special honor. But I'm more honored that you chose to join the team, Thomas. And for some people, that might not seem like a normal, logical thing since we are financial based. Like some people might be scratching their head a little bit and saying, I'm sorry, what? You put Thomas Mann on the team? So give us a little background. Like what drew you to agency focus and why is this the next best move for Thomas Mann?
Well, those are some excellent questions, Carrie. So I'll tell you, it's interesting that 2024 was a big milestone for me, as that was a decade in the industry in various capacities. So as such, I know both of you know this from my last podcast, so I'll keep it more brief, right? I literally grew up with deductibles in the household. My dad was a lifelong agent. He was for a captive. That's how my career started. Then I moved into the independent producer role myself, and another head scratcher from production to the software side of InsurTech. So with two dynamic startups under my belt, Agency Zoom and Donna AI, it's all kind of an opportunity to marry these things together is what I saw as attractive. So I think it's a little bit reductive to call agency focus finance only, right? Because if I were going to distill agency focus to one thing, it's value, right? And that's both a literal number as well as kind of a philosophy. So in terms of what value your agency brings, your team brings to your community, to your clients, right? You could get kind of philosophical with that. But all of that to say, the ability to take all of this experience, whether it was the sales side, whether it was the customer experience through my various CS roles in Agency Zoom and Donna AI, joining Agency Focus is an awesome opportunity to kind of marry that to help agents optimize, right? And whether that's regardless of what their finance motivation is, just help them optimize across operational efficiency, help them optimize their tech stack and how they can leverage, right, the good things they're doing and take it to scale, right? So that was the attraction for me. I joined the agency focus team. I've known Carey for years now, and from the first time I met Carey, I noticed we thought similarly, and we always had a really good rapport. So when an opportunity arose, I was definitely interested to jump at it.
Yeah, well, I'm super pumped that you joined, but you said the magic word scale. So anybody who has a small business knows that scale is the challenge. And I would venture to say there's many independent agents out there that would say that might be one of their challenges as they've grown their business over time. And getting to the next level requires that you create capacity. And that could be capacity because you use technology. It could be capacity because you change the way you do things. But for us, we've grown really quick and we definitely need scale. So there's some infrastructure work that needs addressed in agency focus, not unlike what agents are facing. So let's talk a little bit about what's the first 90-day tackle look like as we focus on scale inside agency focus.
Well, actually, Carey, I think you kind of nail on the head right there. A lot of where agency focus is in its progression as a maturation as a business, right, is very similar to what a lot of our clients face and a lot of the same customers I worked with in these various insurtechs, right? It's a similar stage. And so you've had a great back end from the start, right? But then the client load exploded exponentially, right? And that's been awesome for the growth of the business, but it's now kind of put you, Carey, in the seat that a lot of agency owners and partners find themselves in, which is I am now the bandwidth limitation of my company, right? I have so much institutional knowledge. I have so much client rapport that it's almost impossible to hand anything off. And unless I'm going to cut my now limited sleep out of the equation, how can we scale? And so to take that, there, it really is a parallel track. What are we excited about tackling for scale for us in agency within agency focus? I think will mirror a lot of where our agents find themselves at the start of the year here is how can we leverage technology, right? Anywhere something like RPA is huge, across our agencies, right? And I'm not necessarily saying that's the agency focus way, but anywhere you can take a small task that is manual currently, make it repeatable and mindless and not tap your human capital. That's something I'm excited to build here, leverage that automation. That's something from my time at Agency Zoom, seeing the power of automation firsthand across literally thousands of clients across our user base was awesome. And really tailor that all back to what my focus was at both Donna and Agency Zoom, which is client experience. So how can we improve this infrastructure? How can we take our processes and make them this much better in order to deliver a holistically more structured, more streamlined, and more customer focused experience for our clients, the same way they're trying to do the same thing in the P&C market?
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. Well, I think that I'm super pumped because it's an area that I don't have a lot of experience in. Like I love surrounding myself with super smart people, and I think most business owners love surrounding themselves with people with the skill set that doesn't look and feel exactly like theirs. Super, super excited to have you on the team. The other thing is, it's an exciting time in our industry. I believe it's an exciting time, especially for what we do. I know there's a hard market. I understand that. But for many agents, this is the high. Like, this is for in their career, this is the high of the market in M&A. And they're asking themselves, are we at the high or is it going to continue to grow? Right. So let's not forget, it's kind of a unique time to join and actually be a part of helping agents shape their future and position themselves well for the future, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That was, the way, Carey, things have shaped up with the hard market. I mean, for the last 2+ years, right, in leading customer success at Donna AI, the challenges that they're looking to that platform to solve really aren't that different, in terms of retention, in terms of how can we focus inward on our book of business, right? Where are there opportunities to mine our own customers and not have that new customer acquisition cost when it's easier to sell to someone, right? Underwriting's easier when there's an existing relationships. Seeing that, I think that's something that aligns really well because we've literally been using, a singular platform and interconnectivity there to try and help agencies solve these client challenges. But the hard market, the staffing situation, that's something I know you guys have heard a lot in your work. That's something we've heard a lot because they're almost looking for someone to kind of own a process, whether that's their tech process with the Donna platform, whether that's their holistic, automation strategy, something like that. And it's hard to just keep good AMs, and where we've seen so much consolidation with M&A. It's definitely not a dull time to be in the insurance game for sure.
So, one of the things I wanted to chat about in this episode is the agency focus team actually put together a 2025 predictions, whole little predictions of things that are going to happen based on the data that they're seeing in the industry. So, I wanted to spend this time, since it is early January, going through which one stands out to each of us as something that agencies should be paying attention to, something that we think maybe they're not paying attention to and they should. Things like that. So, Carey, why don't you, Carey? Mom, why don't you kick it off with which one you think is the most, stands out the most to you?
Yeah, I don't know about stand out, but I will tell you that I'm hearing it more and more, especially as we approach the year end. One of the calls I had just before we started recording this podcast was an agency owner that called me and basically said, "Hey, listen," and it's a common thing. "I just found out that I lost two members of my team that were poached by another agency. These particular staff that she called me about were account managers. It's tough to recover. It's tough to say, hey, I want to go through the process and hire and train and all of these things. This might be the time that I need to sell." So there are people that are teetering on the edge of, is this the time to sell? And it feels like one or two or a combination of things happen, the straw that breaks the camel's back, and they teeter to the other side and say, this is now my sign that I want to do this. The problem with that is when you are thinking about the time to sell, you want to sell in a position of strength, not weakness. So if you lose your staff or you lose a key employee and then you go to market, the buyer is going to ask themselves, is this agency able to perform the same way without those key employees? So while it creates this pain that may feel unsurmountable, it also creates a problem in the valuation and the ongoing performance of the agency, which will reflect in the price. So as this challenge of hiring continues, I think you're going to see different responses to it and also different multiples applied to agencies that are in that position versus one that's in a position of strength. So that is a common trend. It's a common thing that's coming up. And it's a challenge in our industry without question. We have basically 20% of independent insurance agency owners are thinking about in the next 5 years transitioning the ownership because they're nearing retirement. That number doesn't change in the producer column or the service column. The average age of a service person and producer are also in the mid-50s. So this is going to continue to happen and continue to be a problem as our demographic ages. And it's something to think about and prepare for.
Well, and I think Thomas would back me up here, though. Agencies who become really tech focused and incredibly streamlined and not reliant on individual staff members, I think that this will be less of an issue, because in order to be incredibly tech focused, you have to have your processes outlined down to, how do I name this document? Who sends it? Who press sends? Who does it get assigned to? Like, you have to have all of those things outlined, which makes it incredibly easy to onboard a new staff member because it's all there documented for you. So I think those are some things to think about as well. If you are anticipating having those staffing issues, no one actually anticipates it. I guess anticipates the wrong word, but if you would like to, bubble wrap yourself from having it impact you a little bit more, have your staff write down how they do, their job before it's too late and they're headed out the door.
Well, maybe don't write it down, but maybe we can use Tango AI or something to document it, right?
Something.
Yeah.
Well,
at the very least.
Not
Listen,
only
I
Lindsay
jump
would
at
I
a chance to use tech for these two rather than me be the one to think of the tech versus one of them. Like, I'm going to take my wins where I can find them, just in case anyone's wondering.
gold star for you there, Carey. And not only, Lindsay, will I back you up, there's no reactions on this platform where I can give you the celebration pop, but I will say, it's incredibly jarring, right? As an outside entity who's worked with so many agencies. I think my connection froze. Back. Hey guys, sorry for the interruption there.
Yeah, you're back.
So
keep going.
I'll take that from the top for the audio editors. Here's what I was saying. The agencies who have not, it's really jarring to me as an outside entity who's worked with so many agencies, how few of these processes are codified. And one of the main things that you can do to de-risk your business, and this is regardless of where you are in your kind of agency life cycle stage, right? Whether you're already looking at, you have a perpetuation plan in place, you're ready to sell, acquire, whatever the case may be. There are so many processes tied to a key employee, tied to the most tenured commercial account manager. And so I would really love, Carey, your perspective on someone who is, I'll go ahead and say it, even if you wouldn't, the valuation lady. how do you tie the value of a business, and how do you kind of grade an agency in evaluation in terms of, are your processes codified? Does anyone other than you who is going to be making this exit really know the secret sauce of X agency?
Yeah, I think having those processes nailed down creates less risk that the agency will have an interruption in performance and service to clients at any given moment if one of those people isn't available for work. So it absolutely strengthens the agency. It also allows them to onboard easier when you have things documented. It's much easier to train when you've got something in place versus we have absolutely nothing. We're going to figure this out. So it allows you to spin up much more quickly. And then it only makes the risk associated with one person around their relationships, not their institutional knowledge, their relationships, their lack. No one else has any exposure into how they get it done. They now at least have that. And all you're worried about is, are there relationship things that you need to worry about? You know what I'm saying? So it limits the amount of risk because risk becomes exponential if the owner is the biggest salesperson and has all the relationships and is the only person who knows how to do X, Y, and Z to run the agency, as well as all the relationships with the carriers. Like, my goodness gracious, talk about a cog in the wheel. Like, there, that is going to come bring this agency to a screeching halt versus one that has delegated a fair amount, documented the processes. Now there's redundancy, and one loss, while it's painful, is not detrimental to the overall agency.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. And Lindsay, you also mentioned in your point around technology, especially smaller independent agencies. Those are the ones, obviously, the larger your book, and it's like any investment strategy, right? In terms of diversification, the larger segment agencies were naturally less affected by the hard market in the P&C arena than some of these smaller ones. So one of the ways that they can really weather the storm, and some that we have seen actually grow and even thrive in this harder market and kind of capitalize, were the ones that were prepped through a really robust technology strategy, right? So the ones who have already leveraged some automation, right? It wasn't, if they had a senior account manager, I've seen this several times, right, who had kind of was close to retirement, was kind of working part-time, right? And they were still owning a really important process because they were frankly the best at it. So then, and this is actually a literal example from a client I was working with. This person had their child had their first grandchild, right? And it was like, you know what? I'm good. Little minimal notice on that. I'm ready to just be really retired. So as such, this agent was kind of scrambling. And what we did there was actually utilize, without getting too techie, a process from the Donna platform, which gives you client analytics, right, to replicate a kind of risk assessment that employee was doing just using that institutional knowledge. So that's just a small example, right? But the ones who have already taken some of this human process, made it as digital as possible, and then embrace that kind of bend, don't break in the remarketing and the additional policy service and all the things we've seen in the last 2 years of the P&C market. So I think just like with anything, the folks who are on the earlier edge of the adoption curve are better prepared to handle market challenges.
Yeah. Well, I think there's also this divide. I mean, we're touching, but we're basically dancing around it. Like, someone who loses employees, someone who doesn't have processes, someone who basically stays past growth, like is thinking about this but not making a decision, and gets to the point where their agency is either flat or declining. There's this gap where I think that there's this impression that all agencies are created equal and all can command the same multiples. But the reality is, agencies are going to command the multiples that are reflective of where they are and what their performance is and what their expected ongoing performance is. So there is a divide happening. And you got to know where you are in that divide. Like, am I investing? Am I positioning myself? Am I attracting new talent to my agency? Am I creating efficiencies by leveraging technology? Am I getting hyper focused and allowing myself to get efficient because I have a niche? Like, all those things create a different performance for an agency. So that divide is real. Where you are on each side of the divide matters. The reality is, though, multiples have increased over time, so you're still going to get a better multiple than you would have 10 years ago, but it's not going to be the same as the agency that's performing at its highest. So to me, that's the biggest headline. It's not like multiples are declining, but multiples are now reflective of your performance. And you should be aware of that. And we should be talking more about that rather than, what did so and so sell for? Because it really doesn't matter what that other person sold for because they aren't your agency. Yeah. Anyway, that's my soapbox, and I'm going to probably die on that hill for sure.
The only other part that really stood out to me in the article was agencies who had a reduced PIF count but retained their base revenue. They're really going to struggle when this hard market softens, and they are basically going to have to rebuild their client base. I think I don't know if I'd be wrong in saying, do you think that's going to be a reason a lot of people sell?
Could be. Yeah. And the not savvy buyers might actually overpay for agencies. If you're not smart enough and you don't have the data, and if you're really going on a multiple of revenue right now, and there's rate that cause that revenue to grow, you could be led to believe the agency will continue to grow when in reality, when rates level out, that agency was flat. So you could overpay. That's a problem that I think will definitely happen if someone's not a savvy buyer and doesn't get some advice.
I also think it's kind of one of those metrics that stays hidden because from working with Indium and looking at carrier reports, PIF count's not always included on every single carrier report that you get. So that's easily one where, sure, the revenue was growing for the last 2-3 years, but their PIF count was shrinking. And as soon as the hard market softens a little bit, all their carrier contracts are going to get pulled no matter what.
So I don't know about all, but some may.
Some of them. We definitely have carriers starting to pull contracts based on PIF count.
Sure.
So the carriers see it coming. It's just does the regular agency also see it coming?
Yeah. Well, I can tell you this. We had a lot of fun doing the predictions. It's fun to look into a crystal ball and say, hey, how do we think the overall market's going to do? We've done it a couple times. We did it as a team. We did it with Mike and Mike from Westfield Bank, which was super fun. The good news, this is all recorded. So at the end of the year, we can say, like, did multiples remain high, and were they different for the two that happened? Will hiring and retaining talent actually have an impact on the number of people that thinks that it's this time? Will multiples decline for those that actually didn't maintain the PIF count? And what impact does that have on the number of people that are selling? I think it's super, super interesting. I will also just say I'm pretty happy I get to surround myself with people that want to contemplate these things and actually spend time, trying to help agents solve and maximize all their opportunity, maximize the value of their agency, but also maximize their opportunities on what they can do to provide for their clients, their staff, and their family. So it was a really fun time going through that article together. I mean, that's my personal opinion.
I absolutely agree. I mean, it was differing perspectives as well, right, from the background of the team. I think one of the things, Lizzie, you made a good point that I actually want to kind of pull the thread a little bit. The folks who have seen the revenue stable, right, PIF count declining, they may or may not know that. The market will soften to some degree again, right? And when they're going to have to be really honest about the stage they're personally at that point, because if they have had customers walking out the back door and they weren't keenly aware of that because of their lack of data analytics or data audit, right? Do they want to, frankly, work that hard to outsell what dropped, right? To retain that position of strength? And if the answer is no, does that mean you're going to market from a less than ideal position? So I think if anyone hears this and isn't sure, this is one plug I can give from a crystal ball. Is we have seen this so many times on the InsurTech side, retention is probably the most difficult metric to standardize, right, and calculate across agencies. Because if you ask 10 agency owners, hey, what's your retention and how did you calculate it? You'll probably get 10 different answers. So I think PIF is my true north. I mean, it's the closest you can get to the most objective, I think. So if you aren't tracking retention by PIF, I would, look at that from a historical standpoint. And that's definitely going to be a major waypoint from which position are you going to end up in.
Agreed.
Totally. Well, Thomas, super excited for you that you're joining the agency focus team. Congratulations. Love seeing
Thank you,
you.
Linz. Super excited to be here.
Team. And I think this episode was really fun. Anybody have any wrap up thoughts?
I don't know. I don't have any wrap up thoughts other than I'm super excited to have you on the team. I'm excited to have your brain on our scale and our growth and thinking about how we can help agencies together and agency focus without question. So I'm confident we'll have the whole team on a podcast at some point talking about the things that we're wrestling and sharing some of the agent stories that we have together. And maybe this is like a trend forward that we'll continue to do. Yeah.
I certainly hope so. I mean, I don't want like you two ladies being the ones to have all the fun, maybe we can get out from behind the screen every now and then. No, I'm super excited to be here, and I'm definitely going to set a Siri reminder after we wrap this for December 26th to see how this aged, right, with these predictions.
No doubt. You got to go back and say, what were those 2025 predictions and how close were we? So, all right, man. Well, I'll be seeing you soon. How about that?
All right. Thanks for having me, ladies. Bye, y'all.